Wyoming Territory, 1879. The wind carried dust like whispers across the empty land, and the man on horseback had not slept in 2 days. Noah Fletcher pulled his coat tighter against the sharp morning air as he crested the last ridge before the town of Gray Butte. His horse, Buck, was lathered and tired, but Noah gave him a soft pat on the neck. "Almost there, boy. Just 1 more mile." The telegram had reached him 2 towns back. A girl had been found living alone in a half-burned shack out near the old mining trail, with 2 children, not her own. Sheriff did not know what to do with her. Said she would not speak much. Said she looked like she had not eaten in days. Noah had not expected to care, but the name on the telegram, Lydia, had hit him like a fist to the chest. He had not seen her in 5 years. He tied Buck outside the jailhouse and stepped into the dusty shade of the sheriff's office. Sheriff Colton looked up from his desk and nodded. "You Fletcher?" Noah nodded. "Where is she?" "Back room. She will not talk to me. Says she ain't the mother of those kids, but they will not leave her side. Little girl's maybe 6. Boy's just a baby." Noah walked past him without another word. The room smelled of old wood and fear. Lydia was sitting on the cot, her back to the wall, a rifle laid across her lap. Her dark hair was tangled, her face bruised, her dress torn at the shoulder. But he would have known her anywhere. She looked up, saw him, stilled. "Noah." Her voice cracked. He stepped in slowly, hands up. "It is me." The little girl by her knee looked up too, eyes wide and wary. The baby was asleep in Lydia's lap, wrapped in a thin blanket. "I got your name from the wire," he said gently. "Sheriff said you were in trouble." She looked down. "I told him I did not need help. You did not have to ask. I came anyway." She shook her head, jaw tightening. "I ain't worth the trouble, Noah." He crossed the room in 3 strides, dropped to one knee in front of her, and looked her in the eyes. "You are worth every mile I rode." Her breath hitched. Then her shoulders folded in like she had been holding herself up too long. "I was not supposed to make it out," she whispered. "The fire bandits came through the homestead. Left me and the children for dead. Their mother was my cousin. She begged me to take them before she died." Noah looked at the girl. She had crawled closer to Lydia, clinging to her skirt. "What is your name, sweetheart?" he asked. The girl's voice was small. "Willa." He nodded. "That is a strong name." Lydia's hand trembled as she touched Willa's hair. "They do not have anyone else. I could not leave them. You are not alone now." She looked at him, her eyes tired. "What are you doing here, Noah? Last I saw you, you were headed east looking for cattle land." "I was. Got as far as Kansas border. Did not take. You always wanted to go." "I did." "Then I heard your name." Silence filled the space between them, the kind of silence that spoke louder than any words. He reached forward and gently touched her wrist. "Let me take you somewhere safe. I do not have anything left. You have them. You have me." Something broke in her face, then something quiet and buried deep. She nodded once. By sundown, Noah had borrowed a cart and loaded it with supplies from the general store. Lydia sat next to him on the wooden bench, Willa curled up in a blanket between them, and the baby Warren sleeping in her arms. They rode out of Gray Butte under a sky painted in orange and gold, the mountains holding the light like a promise. Noah guided the team west, heading for his family's old claim near the Wind River foothills. It had not been used in years, but the creek still ran and the cabin still stood. Lydia sat quiet for a while, then asked, "Why are you doing this?" He did not look at her, just watched the road ahead. "Because I never stopped thinking about you. Because I remember how you looked at me that day I left, like you wanted to say something and could not. I have not forgotten." She swallowed hard. "I was going to ask you to stay. Why didn't you?" "Because I thought you deserved better. A girl who did not come with a broken family and bad history." "And now?" he asked. "I still think that." He finally looked at her, his face soft with quiet ache. "You are wrong." Willa stirred in her sleep, and Lydia looked down at the child. "I do not know how to raise them. I just know I could not let them go. You do not have to do it alone." They made camp under the stars that night, and when the fire was low, Lydia sat beside him, her shoulder brushing his. The children were asleep in the bedrolls. She looked into the flames. "I buried her myself. My cousin. I did not have a shovel, just a broken fence post. Took me all day." He reached over and took her hand in his. She did not pull away. "I am sorry you went through that. You always were the only one who saw me," she said softly. not just the name or the past. Me. I still do. She turned her head, eyes wet. I do not know what happens next. We build something better, he said. One day at a time. Under the stars, she leaned her head on his shoulder. And for the first time in weeks, she slept. By the time they reached the homestead near the Wind River foothills, the sun had climbed high and steady, casting long shadows from the cottonwoods that ringed the clearing. The cabin was smaller than Noah remembered, slumped a little on the west side where the snow had pushed against the supports for too many winters. But the roof held, and the stone chimney stood straight, and the spring-fed creek still hummed just beyond the pasture. He helped Lydia down from the cart, her legs stiff from the travel. Willa clung to the edge of her skirt, wide-eyed but silent, while Noah cradled the infant against his chest, his hand firm on the baby's back. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old pine. Noah opened the shutters one by one, sunlight spilling across the floor in slow, golden lines. Lydia stepped over the threshold without a word, her eyes scanning the room like she was trying to guess who she needed to become to belong in it. We'll start with the hearth, he said, setting the baby in a cradle he'd built years ago when he thought his brother's family might move west. Can't do much without a fire going. I'll sweep, she said, already pulling her shawl tighter and looking for a broom. Willa, help me with the corners. The girl nodded, quiet but eager, and together they worked while Noah went out to chop wood. The rhythm of effort settled over them with almost no words. It was not peace yet, but it was motion forward, steady, alive. By nightfall, the cabin was warm and smelling faintly of boiled cornmeal and ash. The baby slept tucked beside the hearth. Willa had made a nest of quilts and dozed off halfway through folding a stack of old linens. Lydia sat on the edge of the bed, her back to Noah, her hands resting in her lap. You always built things solid, she said, glancing toward the cradle. That'll hold him straight through to walking. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. I never thought I'd see it used. You were always better at looking ahead than I was. He took a step closer. I didn't know how to look back until I lost sight of you. Her shoulders rose and fell with a breath. I used to picture you on some big stretch of land. No fences, no people. Just sky and cattle and wind. I thought you were better off without the weight of me. I tried making it work out there. Leased land near Fort Scott. But I didn't sleep right. Couldn't settle. Every time I fixed a gate or road fence line, I kept thinking about that last day on the porch. How you wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't want you to see I was crying. You should have let me. She turned then, eyes tired but clear. I didn't know how to keep you without making you small. You never made me small, Lydia. You made me real. He sat beside her on the bed, careful not to touch. I didn't come back to fix you. I came back because I couldn't stand the thought of you out there with no one left to stand beside you. She studied their hands, both resting on the quilt. I don't know how to be loved, she said, voice low. You don't have to know. You just have to let it happen slow. The fire crackled behind them. Willa stirred in her sleep, murmuring something soft. Lydia looked toward her, then back at him. I made a promise to their mother, she said. But I don't know if I'm enough. Not for them. Not for you. You're more than enough. You're all of it. Her eyes filled, not with panic this time, but something else, something deep and unspoken that had lived inside her too long without room to breathe. I don't want to lose this, she whispered. Then don't. She reached for his hand. Not a dramatic gesture, just fingers brushing his like she needed to know he was solid. Real. He laced his hand through hers and held it. Outside, the wind shifted through the trees. The fire burned steady, and in the hush between their heartbeats, something soft and certain settled between them. Neither spoke again that night. They didn't need to. The first real snow fell 2 weeks later, slow and soundless, blanketing the foothills in white that softened the world and quieted even the creek's chatter. Noah stood at the edge of the barn, oil lantern in hand, watching flakes dance in the light. Behind him, the wind had settled, the kind of hush that made a man feel the weight of every choice he'd ever made. When Lydia stepped outside, he didn't turn immediately. He heard her boots crunch through the snow, steady and sure. I stacked the last of the wood, she said, pulling her shawl snug around her shoulders. Willa helped with the kindling. He nodded, eyes still on the trees. She's quick. Picks things up fast. They both do, Lydia murmured, a trace of wonder in her voice. He's starting to reach for my face when I hum. He turned then, watching her as she came to stand beside him. Her cheeks were red from the cold, her breath visible in the lamplight. She looked stronger now, not untouched by what had come before, but steadier on her feet. "The cabin's warm," she added. "You made it that way." She didn't answer right away. Her gaze drifted toward the creek, to the faint smoke curling from the chimney. "I keep thinking I'm just borrowing this. Like I'll wake up and it'll all be gone, and I'll be back in that shack with the roof caved in." "You're not borrowing anything." She looked at him. "Then what am I doing?" "Claiming what's yours." "What's ours, if you'll have it?" Her eyes searched his face like she was trying to find the catch, the thing he hadn't said yet. "I never thought I'd be someone who got to rest. I was always the one moving on, or staying behind." He set the lantern down carefully on a stump, then reached for her hand, slow and open. "Then maybe this is where you get to stop running." She let him take it. "I never learned how to be still with someone," she said. "Then we'll learn it together." She looked down at their joined hands. Her thumb brushed over his knuckles. "You're not afraid of what comes next?" "No, not with you." A flicker of something passed across her face. Not fear exactly, more like the gravity that comes when a person realizes they're no longer alone in their burdens. "I found her wedding ring in the ashes," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "My cousin. I've been wearing it on a string under my dress." He didn't speak. "I think I needed to carry something of hers, like maybe it would make me strong enough." "You already are." She met his eyes again. "I want to put it away now." He nodded. "I want my own life. I want it to be here. Then it will be." They stood there in the cold, not moving, not needing to. The snow kept falling, soft and steady, clinging to the folds of her shawl and the brim of his hat. She leaned into him then, not for warmth, but with decision. Her head found the place just beneath his collarbone, and he wrapped his arms around her like there was no question left between them. From inside the cabin, a baby's cry rose, faint but clear. Lydia pulled back gently, her hands lingering at his chest. "That's mine," she said, and there was something fierce and proud in her voice now. He smiled, but it wasn't wide or careless. It was quiet, full of knowing. "I'll be right behind you." She turned and walked toward the door, her steps sure, her back straight. He watched her go, the snow catching in her hair like threads of silver. And when he followed, he knew he was stepping into something lasting. Not perfect, not easy, but whole. The storm would come and go, but the cabin would hold. So would they. The January thaw came slow, spreading across the valley like warm breath against frostbit glass. Noah stood in the pasture with a spade in hand, breaking up the frozen topsoil where he'd planned the garden rows. Lydia had drawn a pattern in charcoal on an old flour sack, mapping out where beans might go, where root vegetables could take to the earth. She hadn't said much while sketching, but he'd seen the way her brow furrowed with thought, how her fingers traced the lines twice, just to be certain. He paused to rest the spade against his boot and wiped his brow with a sleeve already damp from the work. From the barn, Willa's laughter rang out sharp, clear, the kind of sound that hadn't existed in that girl's voice even 2 weeks earlier. Lydia was in the doorway, her apron dusted with flour, watching the child try to feed a goat with a handful of hay. Her mouth curved not quite a smile, but something close enough to it. Noah walked up slow, careful not to interrupt. "You've got a good eye for planning," he said, nodding toward the folded sack in her hand. "I used to help my father with planting, before the sickness took him." She brushed a bit of flour from her sleeve. "He'd mark the rows with strings soaked in ash so they wouldn't blow away." "You think we'll have a long season?" "If we're lucky." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It just sat between them, like a chair left empty out of respect. "You've got away with her," Noah said, watching Willa lift the goat's chin gently to coax it forward. "She trusts you." "I didn't ask her to," Lydia replied. "She just did. She sees something steady in you." Lydia looked down, folding the sack in half and tucking it under her arm. "I used to think if I didn't move, I'd disappear. Now I think stillness might be the only way I stay real." He stepped closer, not crowding her, but enough that she could feel the warmth off his coat. "You feel real to me." "I want to believe that," she said. "But I don't know how to let go of the part of me that expects things to fall apart." "You don't have to let it go. Just don't let it run the place." She looked up at him, the wind catching stray strands of her hair. I think about what comes next, she said. Not just tomorrow. Years from now. When he's too big for the cradle. When she's asking about her own mother. I don't know how I'll answer any of it. You won't have to answer it alone. The words didn't feel like a vow. They felt rooted, like fence posts sunk deep into winter ground. I keep your shirt by the stove at night, she said. When you're out late checking traps. Willa says it smells like horses and wood smoke. He met her eyes, surprised. I didn't want to say that out loud, she added. But I did. He stepped forward and reached for her hand, calloused fingers brushing the inside of her wrist. Anytime you want to say something, you can. She nodded slowly. I'm not used to being safe. Then we'll take it slow. You lead. A gust of wind stirred the air. Snow fell from the barn roof in a soft thump. From inside, the baby gave a low cry, and Lydia turned, instinct already pulling her toward the door. She paused at the threshold. You coming in? Right behind you. She didn't wait for him to catch up, but she left the door open. Later, after Willa had dozed off with her cheek pressed to a folded quilt and the baby lay warm in the crook of Lydia's arm, Noah sat at the edge of the hearth, sharpening a blade with quiet precision. Lydia watched him from the rocker, the floor creaking faintly beneath her bare feet. I never said thank you, she murmured. You don't owe me that. I want to. He looked up. The firelight made her eyes gold at the edges, her face soft with a kind of peace she hadn't worn before. You gave me something I didn't think I'd ever have again, she said. A home that doesn't ask me to forget where I came from. You gave it to yourself, he said. I just made room for it. She stood then, walked over with the baby still cradled, and knelt beside him on the rug. Her free hand came to rest on his knee. I want to stay, she whispered. For good. He reached up, cupped her cheek, and nodded once. You already have. Outside, the night deepened. The snow had stopped. And inside, beneath the weight of all they'd carried and all they'd chosen, something solid settled into place. It was not just survival anymore. It was life. The days lengthened. The thaw crept into the trees, and the creek behind the cabin ran faster, swollen with meltwater and the sound of coming spring. Noah spent the mornings repairing the chicken wire and hauling smooth fieldstones for the root cellar, while Lydia began to sew plain dresses for Willa out of old muslin sheets, her needlework steady and clean. There was no talk of leaving, no mention of what had been. Only the quiet rhythm of living, made sturdier with each passing day. One morning, just after dawn, Noah returned from checking the far ridge and found Lydia sitting on the porch steps with a letter in her lap. Her fingers traced the edge of the envelope, but she hadn't opened it. Ryder from Du Bois brought this up the trail, she said when he approached. Said it came out on the Cheyenne stage. He crouched beside her, wiping the dust from his hands with a cloth. You expecting word? It's from Reverend Halcombe. She looked down at the name written across the front. He married my cousin and her husband. She asked him to witness the guardianship before she passed. Noah waited, watching her thumb the crease. I never told you, she said quietly. But back then, I didn't know if I'd be allowed to keep them. I had no papers. No blood claim on Willa. I thought maybe the courts would send her east to someone else. Did the Reverend know about that? He did. I wrote him after we buried her. Told him what happened. I asked him not to say anything unless someone came looking. He nodded, and she finally broke the seal. She read in silence, lips barely moving. When she finished, she folded the page neatly and held it out to him. He wrote out a statement. Said he's filed it with the circuit clerk in Lander. Named me guardian in her mother's stead. No one else came forward. It's done. Noah took the letter but didn't read it. He looked at her instead, saw the way her shoulders had lifted just slightly, as if something heavy had been set down after too long. You're her family now, he said. I've felt it for a while, she admitted. But now it's written. That afternoon, they planted onions. Lydia knelt beside Willa, showing her how to space the bulbs, her voice low and even. Willa didn't speak much still, but she laughed when the goat got into the seed bag and Lydia chased it off with a wooden spoon. Later, when the baby napped in his cradle and the light turned gold through the window panes, Lydia stood beside Noah in the cabin's single-room kitchen, washing the last of the day's dishes. He dried them slowly, watching the way the light caught on the curve of her jaw. I want to marry you, he said. She didn't flinch. She didn't turn. She kept her hands in the dishwater and said, Why now? Because there's nothing left in me that doubts it. Because I want to wake beside you every day and have no claim between us that's left unfinished. She kept scrubbing the same plate for a long moment before setting it down and drying her hands on her apron. I said once I didn't know how to be loved, she said. But I think that was a lie. I think I was just afraid to let it stay. He stepped closer, his voice even. Then let it stay now. She looked up at him, and this time, there was no hesitation. Yes. They married under the cottonwoods 3 days later. Reverend Norris from the town in the valley rode up with a Bible and a solemn air. Willa held a bouquet of wild crocuses and wore the muslin dress Lydia had stitched. The baby gurgled in Noah's arms during the vows. And when Lydia spoke her part, her voice didn't tremble. They didn't invite anyone else. There was no need. Everything that mattered was already there. That night, after Willa had fallen asleep with flowers still braided in her hair and the baby had been rocked down to soft breath and warm skin, Noah and Lydia sat on the porch and watched the stars come out. I used to think peace was something that passed over a person for a little while, she said. Like rain, like wind, never lasting. And now, she leaned into him, her head resting just beneath his jaw. Now I think peace is something you build. One board, one breath, one promise at a time. He wrapped his arm around her, pulled her close. Then let's keep building. They sat until the fire died down and the night turned quiet again. No words needed, just the weight of her hand in his, and the sound of the wind moving through the grass that would soon be green again. Years passed, slow and full. The garden grew deep roots. Willa learned her letters on the cabin floor, while Lydia read aloud with her feet tucked beneath her. The baby, no longer a baby, took to the saddle by 6, and never fell once. They added a second room to the house when the seasons turned warm again. Lydia painted the shutters blue. Noah never left the valley again, and Lydia never once looked back. They grew old in that house, side by side, with long silences that spoke of everything they never had to say out loud. And in the quiet hours, when the fire burned low and the land was still, they knew they had built something unshakable. Not a new life, just a life whole, and theirs and lasting.